Hello, my name is Felicia Gallegos. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Outreach and Prevention Coordinator for the Sexual Assault and Anti-Violence Information Office here at USU. Otherwise, my office is otherwise known as SAVI. And I am here today to talk to you about healthy relationships, specifically how we build healthy relationships and also how we sustain them. So unfortunately, many of us have not received explicit training or education on forming healthy relationships in our lives. And so the likelihood of ourselves or someone we know being in an unhealthy relationship or even abusive relationship is pretty high. Which is why I am super excited that I get to talk to you all about what healthy relationships look like so that you can make sure that you're forming them and promoting them within your life. I first want to start off by talking a little bit about my office though, because I do recognize that as we go through this presentation, some of you may realize maybe I'm not in the most healthy of relationships, right? Or maybe I could use some help on my communication styles, right? And Savvy is there to support you. So I'm not just going to give you this information and leave you hanging. I want to make sure that you are familiar with our office and how we can support you. So Savvy is located at the Logan campus. We are in the Taggart Student Center, room 311, but you can also contact us through our website or call us or email us, and that information is here at the bottom of the screen. Savvy is a confidential and free resource for anybody that is affiliated with the university. So students, faculty, staff can all seek our services, and we provide three different branches of services. We have therapy, advocacy, and outreach. Many of us are familiar with what therapy looks like, right? So Savvy is trauma-focused therapy, processing experiences of trauma, and of course, the anxiety, depression, other symptoms that may come along with that. One branch that you might not be familiar with is our advocacy. Now, advocacy, I might be a little biased because I work for this office, but it truly is one of the most underutilized, valuable resources within USU. Advocates are basically professional best friends, right? So they are someone who helps survivors heal, and they are there to listen, to support you, and most importantly, to provide you with so many resources and information about those resources. So if, for example, if you are interested in reporting an incident that's happened to you, they're going to tell you all of your reporting options and exactly what each reporting process is going to look like. And then they're going to support you along that journey if you choose to report. But advocates can also help you role play, telling friends or family members about your experience. They can help you talk to church leaders, talk to professors. There's so many things that an advocate can do. Really, the sky is the limit. And their main goal is to remove barriers for survivors along their healing journey. And then the final branch that we have within Savvy is the branch that I oversee, and it is outreach. So ultimately, we are trying to prevent violence from happening before it does, right? So having conversations about consent, healthy relationships, and just how do we engage in respectful practices with others so that we can ensure violence doesn't happen. So that's what Savvy does. I do want to reiterate that we are a confidential resource. So by coming to Savvy and talking to us about an experience you had, that is not a formal report to the university, nor is it a police report. We are a confidential space for you to talk about your experience, weigh your options, and then decide what you want to do. If you do decide to report, of course, we're going to help you through that process. We do have a little caveat to our confidentiality in that we do share with the university, our local USU police and the Office of Equity. We share non-identifying information of experiences that have happened within campus property or at a campus university affiliated event. And the purpose of that is to track patterns, right? So if we hear about a sexual assault happening every Friday night on the track field, we want to be able to identify that and stop that from happening. Again, this is not identifying the information, so we include the date, time, location, and nature of the incident, but it's never connected to the survivor seeking supportive services unless they want it to be. But I do want to let you know that we do that to keep the overall campus safe. And this also goes for all 32 statewide campuses as well. Okay, so enough about Savvy. You know how to get in contact with us. You know what we provide. Let's get to the best part of the presentation, healthy relationships. Where do we even begin to form relationships? And this may sound cliche, but you really have to start by loving yourself, right? By getting to know yourself and forming a healthy relationship within. How do you do that? I'm going to help you, don't worry. So I like to talk about respect. Underlying every healthy relationship is respect. Now, when I talk about relationships, of course, I'm talking about intimate relationships that you may have with a partner, whether that be dating, a situationship, a marriage, but I'm also talking about relationships with friends, with family members, and like I mentioned, ourselves. We have to start with respect. Loving ourselves is about respecting our boundaries, right? We have to uphold the boundaries that we have and expect others to respect those as well. So boundaries are beyond physical boundaries. I think when I say the word boundaries in relationships, a lot of people, their first thought is physical, right? Like what I'm okay doing physically in my relationships. But there are so many more categories to boundaries, and we're going to go through them. And I encourage you to take out a piece of paper. And as I'm going through each boundary category, write down some of the boundaries you have within that category. Because the reality is, the reason why many of us engage in unhealthy relationships is because we haven't taken the time to learn our boundaries, right? What we are okay with and not okay with in our relationships. And if we don't know, we can't communicate that to our partners. And then our partners have no idea when they're crossing a boundary, right? And until maybe that boundary is already crossed and you're like, wait, I wasn't okay with that. Please, you're not respecting me. And then the partner's like, wait, I had no idea that was, you get the gist. It's a mess. So I really want to encourage you to identify your boundaries now. And boundaries are fluid. They are consistently changing. And so do this exercise of looking into your personal boundaries regularly, and seeing what you're okay and not okay with. Okay, categories. The first one is physical. Now, if COVID-19 has taught us anything, it is learning people's physical boundaries, right? What are people okay with physically? Not everybody enjoys hugs, right? But me, like, I love hugging my friends. So if I had a friend who was crying, my first reaction would be to cry with them and hug them. That would be like the first step that I did. That's not going to work for everybody. Not everybody is a hugger. So it's really important to learn physically what people are comfortable with, especially in the age of COVID, when we have to manage who's okay with being close and touching and who's not. Physical boundaries. What are you okay and not okay with? The next categories are emotional and intellectual. So emotional refers to your feelings, how you like to be communicated to, how you like to be supported emotionally, right? For example, I used to have a boyfriend who called me like pet names, right? And some of them were cute, like babe, that's fine. But he also once called me like crybaby, and to him was like my little crybaby, and I was like, that's so cute. It wasn't cute. Okay, it started to become annoying, and it made me feel disrespected to be called that. Because I mean, I understand that I cry a lot, right? I already told you that if a friend was crying, I'd be crying with them. If I saw a dog on the street, I'm gonna cry. Like, I cry. I get it. But to call me a crybaby, it was crossing that emotional boundary. It was starting to hurt me. Words do hurt. So figuring out your emotional boundaries, write down a couple of those. Intellectual, this refers to our thoughts and ideas, right? Maybe even our political perspectives, how we view the world. This can be a space where boundaries are crossed pretty frequently because people feel like they have the right to educate us with what they think is right. Some of you may love having intellectual conversations. You may love it. Some of you may be like, I do not want to talk about politics. Okay, I just don't. That's okay. So identifying your intellectual boundaries. The next category is material. So these are your possessions, your money, what you're okay with sharing, not sharing. Roommates comes to mind. Okay. I have had roommates who mind their space, and I've also had roommates who think everything I own is also theirs. That's not the case. Okay. So figuring out, am I okay with sharing clothes with my roommate? Am I okay with, the way that when you go out with friends and you always pay and they're supposed to Venmo you, but like they don't, like, material. How do you feel about that? Time. This is a huge one that nobody talks about. It's in society, it's kind of like, I can't think of the word, but it's like a good thing when you are just available to everybody 24/7. Like that is praised. That's the word I was looking for. It does not have to be that way. If you work 9 to 5 and after that you don't want your coworkers to contact you, that's okay, right? How you use your time, how people respect your time boundaries. The last two categories I want to talk to you about, the first one is technology. So how individuals interact online. We have been thrown into a digital era with like little to no guidance, right? Everybody has access to you 24/7 now through texting, phone calls, social media. There's 24/7 access to you. And it's this expectation that you are available 24/7 and that you are interacting with people online. And if somebody messages you, it's an expectation to message them back. Like that's just respect. No. If you don't want to talk to somebody, or if somebody is texting you 25,000 times a day, like my mom, it's fine, and you're not okay with that, then you have that right to express that, right? So identifying what boundaries you have online. And then finally is sexual boundaries. And of course, this refers to physical intimacy, but it's also refers to, how people speak around you. I think sexual jokes are becoming more and more common. People are more comfortable talking about sex. And if you're into that and want to join those conversations, go ahead. But if you don't like being around people who tell jokes, sexual jokes all the time, you don't have to go along with it. And I think as we've gone through all these categories, there is one underlying theme, and that is that you have the right to uphold your boundaries whenever you need to, with whoever you need to. The most important part, no justification needed. And this goes both ways, Kay. First of all, as you are identifying your boundaries, what you're okay and not okay with, know that that's okay. You should form your boundaries based off yourself, not what your parents have told you to do, what your religion has told you to do, what your friends are telling you to do. Figure out your boundaries for you. What are you really okay or not okay with? And know that you have the right to express those and you don't have to justify them. You can simply say, like, I'm not okay with you calling me every single day. And that's it. You don't have to say because blah, blah, blah. No justification is needed. You can provide it if you want to, but you don't have to. And that, on the flip side, brings us to those who are listening to someone when they express their boundaries, right? When your partner coming into relationships expresses a boundary with you, you should not pressure them to explain why they have that boundary, to justify it, right? You have to respect others' boundaries. Now, I recognize that sometimes, and a lot of times, when boundaries are, when we're getting close to crossing someone's boundaries, a conversation has to happen. And sometimes that might be a little, as someone who's receiving that, for example, let me give an example. Say you've been dating someone for a while and you have been sexually active within your relationship. And then 3 months into the relationship, 3 months is kind of short, but I guess we're in Utah, so that'll work. But 3 months into the relationship, suddenly the partner is like, I don't want to have sex anymore. That's gonna throw you back a little bit. Since you have been having sex up to that point. And I'm not saying that you have to just say, okay, that's fine, and move on. It's okay to ask questions like, where is this coming from? Can you talk to me a little bit about like why this is a boundary now? It's okay to seek understanding. However, if that person isn't ready to explain to you why they want to take a step back from being sexually active, or if they, if they're not ready to explain it to you, then you can't force them to. Nor can you force them to change their mind about that. You can't say, well, that's not fair. You have to continue to be sexually active with me because you've been sexually active up to this point. Like, that's not fair. It's false advertisement or something like that. No. That's not how it works. Individuals have the right to identify their boundaries and uphold them. And we have to respect that. If you get to that point in a relationship and that's just not working for you, then you can step away from that relationship, right? If you're someone in that example that wants to be sexually active, you don't force your partner to be sexually active. You just realize that that person is not meant to be your partner then, because that's a boundary of theirs, right? And of course, it is so much more complicated than the little bit that I can talk about in this presentation, but know that that is what a healthy relationship looks like. Is that two individuals who are expressing, two or more, individuals expressing their boundaries and they're being respected, right? Now, when it comes to communicating our boundaries, some of us are very much like, this is not okay. And some of us in certain categories, like maybe physical, especially with COVID, it's like, no, stay 6 feet back, wear a mask. Like, I have no problem saying that. But with other boundaries, like maybe your time, you have a hard time speaking up for that. That's okay. That's normal. And to be honest with you, it's going to get easier with practice. The more that you are speaking up about your boundaries and expecting those in your life to uphold them, the more that the easier it becomes to express your boundaries. But when we talk about communicating our personal boundaries, also communication within a relationship, we look at these 4 different styles: aggressive, assertive, passive aggressive, passive. The style of communication that we're going for is assertive, right? This is a type of communication where you are considerate of the individual you're communicating to, and also being willing to fully communicate. So you're not aggressive where it's kind of like, I am going to speak and you're going to listen. It's not passive where you don't say anything because you're really worried about how your partner feels when you speak up for yourself, or how those in your life feel. So you kind of are just, all you do is think about others and kind of become passive. And it's not passive aggressive either, where you are not really communicating, not really thinking about others. I think of like sticky notes, back to the roommate example, when roommates leave sticky notes, like do your dishes, it's passive aggressive. We're really looking for that assertive, where I can communicate to you my boundaries and I'm going to respect your boundaries as well. I'm going to respect what you have to say. I'm going to calmly talk this through with you, right? I'm going to stand up for myself. I'm not going to be passive, but I'm also not going to be rude towards you and silence the other parties that are there. I'm going to listen, hear your concerns, but also stand up for myself. Hopefully that makes sense. And this is something that Savvy works with couples with all the time, about communication styles. Communication is never going to be like a one and done. Like, I know how to communicate and I never have to work on communication again. No, the way we communicate is always going to ebb and flow, and something we always have to work on. So that is ultimately the secret key to success in healthy relationships, right? Learning your boundaries, learning your partner or partner's boundaries, and communicating them in a respectful way. I do want to talk about, though, unfortunately, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, many of us are going to or have already found ourselves in unhealthy relationships, even potentially abusive relationships. And if you haven't yourself experienced an unhealthy relationship, the likelihood of you knowing someone who has or is experiencing is very high. So I want to talk about when a relationship crosses over to that unhealthy, abusive area, what that looks like. The first thing that we want to consider when we're looking at unhealthy relationships is power and control behaviors. So these are behaviors that an abusive partner will use to have power and control over their partner. So this can be things like physical abuse, slapping, hitting, shoving, literally having that physical power and control over someone. It can also be things like emotional abuse, right? So like speaking, calling people names, criticizing someone, undermining them, gaslighting them. Children and pets can also be used to have power and control over an individual, right? Like, I am, I'm going to take the kids if you leave me, or these types of things. We also see on here, of course, like homophobia being used within a relationship of an LGBTQ individual, right? Maybe one partner is out and the other partner is not. And the partner that's out says, if you don't do this or that, or if you don't let me do this or that to you, I'm going to out you. A huge one we see is isolation too, that abusive partners begin to cut their other partner off from their networks, right? Whether that's activities that partner enjoys, friends, family members. And it doesn't happen in a way that like, you can't go there. You can't go hang out with that person. You can't go to that like art class, whatever it is. It happens in a way that's like, if you love me, you won't hang out with that person because I don't think they like me, right? We also see technology being used to abuse, right? Controlling someone's whereabouts, following them, controlling what they can post, what they can't post. I put this wheel up here to give you all a good idea of some of the behaviors we see, but know that this is not an exclusive list, that any behavior that is used to have power and control over another individual is an abusive behavior. I mean, we hear new things every day. Like the other day, we heard Venmo being used to track someone's finances. We've heard of smart homes being used to cause fear, right? Because you can control the temperature from your phone. And so the abusive partner is turning the temperature up and down, is unlocking and locking the doors, these different things to cause fear. So whenever you're in a relationship, or you see a friend that's in a relationship where one partner is trying to have power over them or control their behavior, bells should go off in your head that like, this is not healthy. This is not potentially an abusive situation. And the other thing to keep in mind with these behaviors is that they happen in a cycle. So it isn't like the abusive behavior is present consistently, especially in the beginning of a relationship, right? That's what we call like the honeymoon phase. This is where everything is great. This is a Nicholas Sparks movie, right? The Notebook. This is, well, actually, don't get me started on the Notebook, but it is dreamy. It is, this person is everything you wanted them to be. And then what we see happen is tension begins to build in that relationship. Sometimes there's a reason, right? Like COVID, we all had to start living together and isolating together. But sometimes that tension builds for no real reason. It just is like this weird feeling in the relationship. And then there's an explosive incident, right? Something on the power and control happens, whether that's somebody calls you a name or demands access to your social media. There's some type of power and control. What we see as a relationship goes on, oh wait, after that explosive incident, it enters the honeymoon phase again, where everything is great. That abusive partner is apologizing, saying it will never happen again, and they are just beginning to act like that dream partner. This cycle goes on and on and on. And it's important to note that sometimes the explosive incidences are like 6 months apart. So it's not easy to recognize them. But as time goes on in that relationship, the frequency of explosive incidences increases, as well as the severity of the abuse. So maybe in the beginning of the relationship, it's a lot of name calling, maybe some gaslighting behavior. But then as the relationship progresses, we enter that physical, sexual abuse area. So these are things that you should be looking for as you communicate with friends, family members, colleagues. If they're talking about these power and control behaviors, and these power and control behaviors are happening in this cycle, that's something to say, to take warning to, and maybe encourage that person to seek services, so seek some support and educate them about the cycle of violence. 3 things that I want you to remember about unhealthy relationships is that it is not simple to leave a relationship that is unhealthy or abusive. On average, a survivor of relationship violence will attempt to leave their relationship 7 times before doing so successfully, right? That means that they left that relationship and got back into it 7 times before they were able to actually leave permanently. And that happens for a lot of reasons. Again, that honeymoon phase, you love this person. When the abuser is good, that is everything you ever wanted. And you hold on to that and you have this hope that they're going to get better. But if that cycle is happening, it's really important to consider that it may never get better. Doesn't make it any easier to leave. So we survivors get asked all the time, like, why didn't you just leave? And it's really not simple. And you get to a space too where you've been isolated from not only support people in your life, but also your finances, your materials. You don't have a car in your name. Your house isn't in your name. You don't have your own money. And it's literally a safety threat, nearly impossible to leave that relationship without some professional help. The second thing I want you to know is that relationship violence does not know sex, gender identity, gender expression, or sexual orientation, right? So I think if I was to say what does domestic violence look like? Many of you would say it's a husband abusing a wife. No, of course, I mean, that is domestic violence, but it could be any relationship dynamic, right? Dating partners, it can be a gay relationship, lesbian relationship. It can be a woman abusing a man, like the wife abusing the husband. There is no one set way for relationship violence to occur. And the third thing I want you to know is that recognizing unhealthy elements within our own relationships is incredibly difficult. I mean, the phrase rose-colored glasses exists for a reason, right? And so it really is the responsibility of upstanders, right? For the friends and family members who are concerned about what's going on within a relationship to be upstanders and say something to that person. Let them know that you're concerned, that you care about them, that you're there to support them, and make sure that they know your concern. I think a lot of times we can be like, well, it's not really any of my business, but it is. If you blame it on me and say Felicia told me this was my business, that is completely fine. But I'm telling you, like, it is your business if you are concerned about someone to say something, even if it isn't relationship violence. There's a myriad of things that it could be, and we want to make sure people know that you're worried about them, that you care. Supporting survivors. Just a final thought to wrap up this presentation. A lot of times we get asked, how do I approach somebody who I think might be in an unhealthy relationship? How do I support someone who comes to me and tells me they're in an unhealthy relationship? And I will tell you this, it is all about how you make them feel. So many times survivors of violence, when you ask them, what the person said to them when they first disclosed their experience, they have no idea. They can't tell you unless it was a negative experience where they were blamed or questioned about their experience, and it was a negative thing that they were told. They rarely can remember what exactly was said to them. But if you listen with empathy, if you validate their experience and tell them, like, I am so sorry that this happened to you, but I'm here to support you however you need, and you create this safe space, they remember that. They remember feeling safe with you. So we want to be someone who creates that space. We do not want to be someone who asks questions that may blame or shame a survivor, right? Like, why haven't you left? Why would you let this person talk to you like that? Why would you let them hit you? It's not our job as someone who's supporting a survivor to figure out everything that happened, to investigate, to question. And that's going to be your first instinct, because that's human nature, to figure out what went wrong, what exactly happened. But it can be very detrimental to the survivor's experience when we ask questions that are like accusatory potentially. So I would encourage you, best practice is to just avoid too many questions, except for how can I help you, right? And just validating their experience, recognizing, like, I know it's hard to be in a healthy relationship, and I'm here, whatever capacity you need. Educating about, for those in a relationship violence specifically, educating about that power and control wheel and a cycle of violence. I've been doing this work for 6 years now, and I will say, working with survivors who are in unhealthy relationships, educating them about the power and control wheel and the cycle of violence is crucial in their ability to self-identify their relationship as unhealthy. And then if you do have any reporting responsibilities, you want to make sure that you interrupt and inform them of those before they disclose to you, even if it may be awkward. And then finally, refer them to resources, right? You are not a professional, and getting them to professionals that can support them. So that is all I have for you today. Please feel free to reach out to me. My personal information is here at the top. But you can also contact Savvy Office, which our information is here. If you have any questions about this presentation, or also just generally, we are more than happy to help you. I hope you learned something today. I encourage you to go learn more about your boundaries and start practicing upholding them. And I hope that you have an incredible day. Thank you so much for being here, and yeah, bye.